Coach Hugo. So welcome all. Sorry about the small hiccup, and as everyone knows, Zoom and hiccups are quite common. So sorry about that. So welcome to this session for a master class by Coach Hugo, and in a minute, Coach Hugo also will appear on the screen. So before we start that, uh, those who don't know me, and just let me introduce you so that you'll realize the guy who's talking. So my name is Pramod. I'm referred to as Coach Pramod by many, and as you see, the name is about what recreational runners can learn from the elite runners. So I know a thing or two about uh, recreational runners because I kind of been training recreational runners for last 10 plus years, and by this time I would have trained maybe more than 8,000 recreational runners. So yeah, and that's where when I met up with Coach Hugo, I realized that there is tremendous amount of info Coach Hugo as. And now let me add Coach Hugo to the screen, and welcome Coach Hugo to this session. And thank you very much for doing this session for all of us. So before we move on, let me introduce Coach Hugo with some interesting facts, and I guess you guys can see my presentation, and here you go. So this is our session today, learning from recreational runners, for recreational runners from elite runners. So then who better to talk about elite runners than this gentleman who, when as a kid at as the age of 14, 15, he started running. And when he started reading the running related magazines. And then he saw some pictures of these Kenyans running fast and got so fascinated and put that picture on his bedroom wall and said that one day I will run with these guys. And that's what he did. So here is Coach Hugo as a runner. Yeah. And he turned professional in 2020. Uh, he was Netherlands topmost runner. His PB is 212, and this is for FM, of course. Yeah, full marathon PB 212. So he is himself an elite runner. Uh, and then he moved on to learning about more about human body, became an expert in human movement sciences. And that's where, he was definitely moving towards being a coach. And he continued with his childhood dream of being there. He went to the camp to train for himself, Lona Kibet camp, which is very, very famous camp in uh, in Eton, Kenya, which has changed world running completely. So he attended that camp and then started coaching himself in Kenya. And he has been working with Kenyan elite athletes. Many of them have given the world's best performances on those years. Yeah. He also, incidentally, is associated with Indian running and Indian elites. And for about 5 years, he has been coaching Indian elites in Bhopal at National Athletics Academy. And one of his student, Murli Gavit, as you know, Murli has been a silver medalist at Asian Championships. So he is not new to India. And now he organizes camps. So he has created two very nice camps in Kenya where he hosts runners and then train them. So that's how a man who started as a kid with a vision to run fast and learn from the best, and he ultimately ended up there. And for last about 15, 16 years, he is as Kenyan as anybody. And the one problem with him is he can't go home and boast about running because his wife is again a world elite athlete, and the husband and wife are both of them are associated with elite athletes. They are elite athletes. So his entire family, his sister-in-law is also a very, very famous elite athlete from Kenya. So here you go. Over to you, Coach Hugo. And yep, please go ahead, Coach Hugo. You can unmute and talk.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Pramod, for having me here. It's going to be a pleasure to talk to everyone. I always like talking about training. I think everyone who comes here stays in my guest house. Maybe people get headache from me sometimes talking about running and training. Although most people love running, of course, that's why they come here. Thank you for the introduction. It has really been a pleasure for me to work in India. Also with we used to recruit actually young upcoming talents to time trials that we did throughout the country. And so someone like Muli Gavit, actually, he was working in construction. When we recruited him, he was 17, 18 years and lifting bags of cement every day from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. And he would train early before that. And then we started working with him and, trying to make him an international runner. That is all I wanted to say about that. We can go to the presentation. I think I will switch off my video now to improve the quality of the sound. Thanks, Pramod. We'll start talking about the Kenyan approach and, of course, what we do in our camps. So when people come to Kenya to train here, there's a few things we want to discuss with them. So the first thing we want to kind of inform them about and talk with them about is, why are Kenyans so good? What makes these people dominate the running world? Not everything Kenyans do is magic. But there are differences between how Kenyans train, about their attitude in life, about their attitude in running, compared with people from other countries, for example. And I think for someone like me as an outsider, it's a bit easier to see. Always as an outsider, when you come to another country, the people from the Kenyans don't realize it from themselves. But if, as a foreigner, when you come here and you've traveled a lot, it's relatively easy to compare what they do and what others do and what works, what doesn't work. So that's one of the subjects that we talk about. Another subject that we talk about, you can go to the next slide, is what can we learn from elites? So this is something that we talk about today. I call it a teaser. We can talk for hours about training, so we can't do everything, of course, in this seminar, but today we will discuss at least part of what are the things that we can learn from elite or elite runners. So this actually relates to elite runners from all over the world. I'm not talking specifically about Kenyans now, but generally elite runners. When you're here in E10, there are between 1,000 and 1,500 Kenyan runners here, but there are also always runners from all over the world. For example, I'm sitting in my guest house right now. Last year, we had here Sifan Hassan, who won 3 medals at the Olympics. She was the first woman ever to win 2 gold and a bronze medal in the Olympic Games. So she trained here, but we have people from all over the world, elite runners and amateur runners from all over the world training here. So that's the nice thing of being here. You can learn from everyone. Another thing we talk about is what can we learn from science? Pramod, you can go to the next point. What can we learn from science? I have a scientific background, and I still love reading about anything related to running and what is proven, what is actual fact, and what is basically fiction. There's also a lot of misunderstanding. Kind of fake knowledge that people have about running. So that's something we discuss. And then the last thing, of course, is how does this all apply to you as an individual? When you come to Kenya as a recreational runner, you don't just want to know, like, okay, what do the elites do? But also, how does that knowledge actually help you? How can you become a better runner? Today we talk about what we can learn from the elites. There's a few subjects I want to discuss. The first subject is the training program. So we'll go into detail about that after this. Next point, commitment. This is a big thing, of course. The level of commitment of elites compared with recreational runners. The third one is also very important, intensity, discipline. And the fourth point is the planning of races. So we'll go through all those 4 points now, starting with the training program. Next slide. Yeah. So I'll leave this slide here for a minute. You can take a look at it. This is kind of an average training program for an elite runner. There are obviously differences between how one elite runner trains compared with the other one. Not everyone trains exactly the same, but it's surprising how much similarities there are. Yeah, just take a look at this program. You know, Monday is 2 easy runs. One is relatively easy, about a minute slower than marathon pace per kilometer. The second run is slightly moderate, but at maximum maybe 30 seconds per kilometer slower than marathon pace. So still, still considerably slower than marathon pace. Keep in mind that this is for a marathon runner who runs close to 2 hours, right? So if you're running 4 hours on a marathon, or 4.5 hours, that's a slightly different marathon pace, right? So if you're running a marathon in 4 hours, 4.5, your moderate pace might be very close to your actual marathon pace. You see on Tuesday a track session in the afternoon, can be in the morning also. That depends on where people train. Typically in Europe, people do their harder workouts in the evenings, but in warmer countries like in Kenya and India, we do our workouts in the morning. Then Wednesday and Thursday are 2 relatively easy days again, with just easy runs, slightly moderate runs. Then Friday is another workout, as you can see, 4 by 3 kilometers. Saturday is a resting day, and then Sunday a long run. So yeah, this is just an example of how an elite runner, typical elite runner would train.
One quick addition here. So you have said 45 minutes, 60 minutes, just for everyone.
Yes. Yeah, correct. When it says that, yeah, that means 45 minutes, 60 minutes. That may not be clear for everyone.
Yeah. I just wanted to highlight, right? So
yes.
If you see Monday, guys, if you see Monday, 60, what I said is 60 minutes of easy run. Yeah, that's 4 at 340 per kilometer. So you can calculate how many kilometers that is. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that would cover
to barge
15 to 16. Yeah, no, that's a good point. So Monday actually would be around 10 kilometers in the morning, maybe close to 11, and the afternoon would be around 15 to 16 kilometers. So this athlete would cover around 26 kilometers on a Monday. This is also very comparable with how I trained for about, let's say, 10 to 12 years of my life. Yeah. Some weeks would be a bit more. Like this comes to a total of 160 kilometers, which is not very high for an elite runner. This is kind of an average week. There will be weeks going up to 190 or 200 kilometers. And there will be some recovery weeks with maybe 120, 130 kilometers. Yeah. Can we do the next slide? So I wanted to go to a few of the specific of this program. There's high mileage, obviously. And the interesting thing is that most of it is easy, 30 to 60 seconds per kilometer slower than marathon pace. So that's something that you see across the board, like among all the elite athletes, because they can train so much. Most of their runs have to be easy, because it looks like almost a law of physics that people can't do 4 to 5 workouts per week. They can't push their body all the time to a level that is that they get so tired, because that would be exhausting, right? So the high mileage makes people to run makes people to improve. Actually, high mileage, also science shows this, helps you to increase your vascularization in your muscles, which means you get more blood vessels, you get more mitochondria in your blood cells, in your muscle cells, sorry. So this is one of the specifics, but this mileage is mostly easy, not super easy. Of course, I mean, a pace of 4 minutes per kilometer is still high for most runners, but for an elite runner who runs a marathon in, you know, almost a minute per kilometer faster, that's relatively easy running. Then there are 2 to 3 hard sessions per week. There are a few exceptions in the world of people who do maybe often 4 workouts per week, but this is quite an exception. You see almost everywhere that athletes are able to do 2 to 3 pretty hard training sessions per week. The focus for most elite athletes is on aerobic development. And with aerobic development, I mean things at marathon pace, half marathon pace, anaerobic threshold. So that's slightly faster than half marathon pace. There will be a little bit faster than that, but mostly aerobic development. So yeah, working on the the longer distance races basically. So what you see, for example, when people, you know, I've seen people from, you know, recreational runners from other countries who train maybe 4 times a week, and all they did was going to the track and doing 10 times 400 with 2 minutes recovery very fast. And that's not a bad session, but that's not aerobic development. Then you're working more on your speed, on your VO2 max, and that's not bad to do. But just if you compare that now with elite runners, they work more on their aerobic development, so they will do longer intervals. If they do short intervals, there's a very short recovery. So that's one of the aspects. And the last point, step-by-step development. Yeah, this is quite important, of course. When I was 16, 17 as a young runner, and I ran, you know, I was a young boy, I was running at the national championships. The longest distance I would do was 3 kilometers, 3,000 meters on the track, which I ran in about 9 minutes and some seconds. And then I remember sitting down with my coach and I said, look, I'm now 16, 10 years from now, I want to be a good marathon runner. And then he said, okay, you know, but then you have to, you know, if you want to be a good marathon runner, you have to run, let's say, under 2 hours and 18 minutes on a marathon. And to do that, you have to run around 160 kilometers per week, because we don't see guys of that level who are running 100 kilometers per week or 120. You have to run 160. So we made a step-by-step plan for those 10 years to go from roughly 60 kilometers per week to 160 over the course of 10 years. This is not something you do in 1 or 2 years. If you try to do it, you will fail. You have to realize that every year you should increase the load by a little bit, just a little bit, enough for your body to handle it and be able to respond to it. So you increase the mileage, but you also increase a bit the quality. You still stick to those 2 to 3 hard sessions per week, but you make them a bit longer. When you're young, like in my case, I would do 6 times 1 kilometer on the track. That's about what I could handle. Whereas later I could do 15 times 1 kilometer on the track as a hard workout. And I could do 5 times 5 kilometers at my marathon pace, which I, of course, would have never been able to do when I was 16 years old. So yeah, you look at your whole training program and step by step, you make it a bit heavier. This is just, you know, very quickly actually to show you also the basic rule of training. When you, as you see in this slide, when you present your body with a training stimulus, that's a training session, you actually create fatigue first. As you see down there, you get tired. After a training session, you're not better than before, you're actually worse. I think everyone knows that from experience, but it's good to keep reminding yourself of that. Training makes you weaker. It's the recovery after that that makes you stronger, right? The recovery leads to supercompensation, which is when you're stronger than you were. And when you apply a new stimulus at that point, you're building your body up to be stronger. If you apply another training stimulus when you're still in recovery mode, when you're still like below that dotted line, you're just going to get weaker. Okay, next. When we talk about commitment of elite runners, and this counts actually for everyone, it's very good if you know your why. Why are you running? What do you want to get out of it? What does it do for you? There can be many different reasons. Maybe you do it to prove yourself that you can make your body stronger. Maybe you're doing it for your health. Maybe you want to show something to your kids. Maybe you're doing it, to beat your annoying neighbor who keeps on telling you that you can't beat him in a race. There can be many reasons why you're running. It's good to be aware of that, because if you are aware why you're running, it's easier to be committed, to wake up, every day, or let's say 3, 4, 5 times a week, and go for that run. It's good if you're aware of why you're doing it. And the second part of commitment is that you have to be aware that you should prioritize recovery. Really, it starts with motivation. Why do you do it? And the second point is an understanding that recovery and training are actually one. They are like two sides of the same medal. Yeah, that's why I put that curve there, that shows that recovery and training are related. This is a big difference between elite runners and recreational runners. Partly that is because they are elite. Of course, they don't have a full-time job, but they already got to that point by prioritizing recovery. When I was a student, I was, my fellow students may have looked funny at me sometimes. I remember that I would run in the morning, and then when we had a little break, I would go somewhere in the corner of the canteen. We call it canteen. I don't know how you call that, like where you're having your lunch. And I would lie down and take a nap for an hour, because I knew I had another session in the afternoon and I wanted to recover. And the same thing when I finished my master's degree in 2000, I knew that I really wanted to be a good athlete, and there was no way I could run 200 kilometers a week if I was going to work 40 hours a week or more. So I decided to look for a part-time job, 5 hours a day, train in the morning, take a nap from about 10 o'clock in the morning up to around 11:30 or 12, then go to my job, and then in the evening a second session. But if you can't do that, I understand, of course, that not everyone is able to have a part-time job and still pay all the bills. You can still prioritize recovery in your own way, because it's about having a 24-hour a day, how do you say, awareness of the fact that you have to recover from your session and that you have to get ready for your next session. So what you eat, when you drink, how much you sleep, trying to avoid stress, trying to minimize standing on your legs. Basically everything that costs energy takes a bit away from your recovery. Yeah. So whether it's an argument with your partner, whether it's driving in traffic jam for 2 hours, everything that costs energy takes away from your recovery. So that is something that elite athletes are extremely aware of and that they try to maximize. That's why it's important to make a plan for every day. When you wake up, you already know what you're going to do. You want to know what you're going to do to maximize your evening or morning session. Or let's say in this case, I know most of you will train early in the morning. So you make a plan for that day to make sure you're fresh the following morning so that you can have the best possible workout, so that you don't, wake up being very tired and have a lousy session. You go through your day with an understanding that, hey, tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock, I want to be ready. And the last point, of course, stick to your plan. This seems logic, but it's very difficult for many people. They make a plan, but they don't follow up on the plan. They don't stick to it because things come in between. And to be honest, I see this even with some elite runners. I never had this. I was extremely serious with my training, but I had a fellow athlete from the Netherlands who, would sometimes say, "Oh, I was not able to do my session because I was waiting for the electrician to come, and he didn't show up." So he didn't stick to his plan. I wouldn't do that. If I would make sure I make an appointment with an electrician after my training, and if he doesn't come after 10 minutes, I would go. So stick to your plan. Just this small slide in between. Actually, there's a simple principle of progression to show you, this is what actually happens when you apply a stimulus to your body. You recover, you get super compensation, you apply the new stimulus. So this is how your body gets stronger over time, with maybe every 3, 4, 5 weeks or whatever your coach plans for you, some extra recovery so that you don't burn out. That way you build up. Our body responds best to consistency. So consistency that's also an important point. I noticed this when I was coaching my athletes in Bhopal. Not all of them understood this. There were athletes who were all the time, there were things in between. They had to go home to see a sick mother. They had a wedding somewhere. Then they had exams, which was also important, of course, exams. So I wouldn't say no to that. But then after 3 months of training, where the best athletes in the team had done, let's say 10 sessions per week times 13 weeks is 130 sessions. There were a few athletes who had done, from those 130 sessions, they had done maybe only 80 sessions, and they were still expecting to run a personal best at the national championships. So I told them, look, this is not how it works. You have to be consistent if you want to improve. You cannot just train 4 times this week and then next week do only 1 session, and then the week after go back to 4 sessions, and the week after again maybe you don't run at all, and then expect to get better. You have to train 3 to 4 times every single week, with the exception maybe of 1 or 2 short periods in a year when you have a recovery, maybe after a marathon. But other than that, you have to try to be consistent, because the weeks that you are not consistent, you're actually going downwards, you're losing. Yeah, structures and a good rhythm obviously are important. This helps you to be consistent. And step-by-step development. Yeah, these are basically the basic ingredients of training. Okay, we can go to the next slides, I think. Yeah. This is also an important point.
The last point. Last point.
Sorry?
The last point. No shortcuts.
This is going to be... Sorry?
There are no shortcuts. That last point came and then we moved the slide.
Oh, okay. There was sorry. Yeah. You're right. There's another point. I have not seen that. Yes, exactly. There are no shortcuts when it comes to training. I mean, this is you have to simply look at how your body responds, and if you understand the physiology, this is how it works. I one time was contacted by someone, a British guy, who told me, I want to train like an elite runner. I'm now running, 50 kilometers a week, but I want to challenge myself, train like an elite runner, and see where I can get in the next 1 year. So I told him that's impossible. We call it a contradictio in termine, like 2 terms that are not compatible with each other. Train like a top athlete within 1 year. I said that simply doesn't work, because a top athlete trains the way they train because of 10 years of building up. And he said, yes, but I want to go through that in 1 year. No, I said, that's impossible. He said, I want you to coach me that way, so please do it. I said, okay, if you pay me, I do it. We give it a try, but I can almost guarantee you it's not working, but if you want to try, we can give it a try. Well, it didn't work, unfortunately. He did pretty well for 6 months, and then after about 7 or 8 months, he got injured for a long time, which of course was because of building up too fast. And If I get this request again, I will not do it, because it was also for me as a coach, it's not good. It's frustrating, but at least I had warned him that there are no shortcuts. You can't do this in 1 year. Yeah. Intensity discipline. What do we mean with intensity discipline? Intensity discipline means that you run at the pace that you're supposed to run. And this is what elite athletes are masters at. When they have an easy run, they run easy. When it says moderate, they can go moderate. When it says marathon pace, they run at their actual marathon pace. So you will not see an elite runner pushing very hard or on an easy run, because they know the next day is a workout, and that's where they have to get the quality, right? So that is what I mean with intensity discipline. And more broad, elite athletes are masters in doing what they're supposed to do. They know they have to get stronger. They do the strength training twice a week or 3 times a week. If they know stretching helps them, they do it. Anything that they're supposed to do, they do it. If they know they have to take rest, they take the rest. Yeah. Part of intensity discipline is understanding the meaning of a session, right? So, for example, when your coach gives you a threshold session, a threshold is the pace, roughly, like easily, if I put it easily, it's the pace you can run in a competition for about 1 hour. For some people, that might be a 10K race. For others, that might be 12K or 15K. For elite runners, that's almost a half marathon. So that's roughly your threshold pace. If your coach gives you a session at that pace, you want to make sure you run at that actual pace or that effort. When you run faster, you lose the meaning of the session, because you will build up too much lactate, too much tiredness, and you're not actually training what you're supposed to train. Another interesting thing about intensity discipline, this was well documented by a famous scientist called Stephen Seiler. Stephen Seiler is an American scientist who lives in Norway. So he was observing some of the elite runners, not only runners, but also they have those people who do the cross-country skiing. They're very good at that. And he saw them walking up a hill. And he was wondering, those people are so good. They're Olympians. Why would they walk up a hill instead of run? So when he approached them and he asked, why do you do that? They told him, look, today is supposed to be easy. If I run up that hill, I'll be tired when I reach the top. And I don't want to be tired because tomorrow is my workout. Yeah, this is a difference between how elites train and how I've seen some or many recreational runners train. Some of the recreational runners, they do their easy runs too hard, and then they end up not being able to do the quality sessions very good, right? So the easy part goes too fast, the fast part goes too easy. So everything kind of ends up being in that in-between zone where you get very tired, but you don't get the best quality. So this is where intensity discipline comes in. So yeah, this is actually the point I just made. You want to avoid half-half training. You want to do your easy runs easy, not like a pedestrian pace, of course. Like basically the rule should be you run your easy runs as fast as you can do without impacting your recovery for the workouts. So for example, if you do your easy runs at, let's say 7 minutes per kilometer, and your workout session goes at 5:30 per kilometer, because that's maybe your marathon pace. If you're able to run that pace 5:30 per kilometer in your workout, that's what matters most. If you then start to do your easy runs, instead of 7 minutes per kilometer, maybe a bit faster, like 6:45, 6:30 per kilometer, and you are still able to do a workout well, then that's fine. But if you start to see that you're getting too tired and your workout starts to suffer in a way that you can't handle the pace anymore, then you know that you've gone too fast on your easy runs. This is also an important point: enjoy the training, but don't let the enjoyment lead you. This is where I see a difference between even between elites and those just below elite, like the sub-elite. Elites are very they enjoy what they do. They enjoy the whole process, but they enjoy especially doing it in a good way. they don't let the enjoyment leads them. Whereas you see with even with some of the sub elites, they will say like, they're training for a marathon, but then suddenly next week there's a race in their town, a half marathon. Oh, like nice, I want to run, I want to go there, you know. So they let the enjoyment lead them at that moment, because how important is that half marathon for them to perform better in the marathon, in the full marathon? Probably it's not important. Probably it's better for them to do a training session, but they just look at the fun basically, and they say, hey, I want to do that because it's fun. Or you get some people actually doing a lot more training than they're supposed to do because they enjoy that. It's lovely to enjoy your training. You should enjoy your training, but you don't have to let it lead you. If you have a small injury, if you have a small pain in your knee, you don't go out for a long run just because it's fun. No, you have to make sure that that pain in your knee disappears. So you take a rest, you go to the physio, or if it's possible, you go for a 4 or 5 kilometer easy jog, everything to recover and get back to normal. And the last part I wanted to discuss is race planning. This is also where you see a difference between elites and recreational runners. Elites would always pick a limited number of A races, so those are the most important races. So if you're a marathon runner, you may pick 2 marathons per year, and then maybe 1 or 2 other half marathons where you want to perform. If you're a 10K runner, you may want to pick 2 to 4 big 10K races where you want to be at your best. So these are the peak races. Apart from that, you want to add a few B races. I say 4 to 6, so that maybe in the maximum you would do in a year would be about 10 races. Let's say once a month, with a few months where you're not training so hard, so you don't do a race. Those B races are less important. Generally, they are there to help you do better in the A races. So if you look at what elites do, they don't just run a race for fun. They enjoy, of course, doing the race, but they have a goal for each race. So you have to know the goal of each race. And with that, I don't mean that you should know if you want to run, what time you want to run. If you want to run 1 hour 45 on this half marathon or 1 hour 42, that's not so important. What's more important is this a race where you're going all out from start to finish? Or is this a race that you want to run in a progressive way because maybe it's part of your training and you want to test yourself in the last 5 kilometers and be able to do another good workout a few days later? Is this a race? Maybe it's a half marathon where you want to run at your marathon speed to kind of test yourself for 21 kilometers running at your marathon speed. So you have to know the goal of each race and then stick to that. You want to taper well for the A races. So tapering generally for a big race would be around 2 weeks, let's say 10 to 14 days of reducing your training. Even here, I see that a bit difference between elites and sub-elites or recreational runners. For an elite runner, they would stick very well to the taper. Whereas sub-elite runners and recreational runners, they try to sometimes they want to test themselves in training. Or they start, what happens when you taper is that you start to get fresh. So for example, a coach might give you just an easy session, 6 times 1K at your half marathon speed. This is of course a very comfortable session. If you can run 21 kilometers at a certain speed, doing that in training for only 6 kilometers with a recovery of maybe 90 seconds in between is very comfortable. Elite runners will stick to that because they know this is meant for them just to sharpen up and to be stronger in the race. Whereas I've seen some recreational runners and even some of my runners in Bhopal sometimes who do that. They feel good, so they start to push hard on that session. They say, "Coach, look, I did it much faster than before." I said, "Yes, because it's only 6 repetitions and you normally do 10 or 12. right? And now you're doing 6 because you have to get ready for the race. So sometimes I would have to stop the training because people would push too hard in those last sessions before the race. And then for the B races, you don't want to reduce the training. Here, this is where consistency comes in. You want to be able to continue training. So let's say now you have, 12 or 16 races in a year, and every race you're going to taper. In the end, you're not going to get better. Science also shows that if you taper for 2 weeks for a race, or even 10 days, you can get 1.5 to 2.5% better at that race. But in the long run, you're getting 0.5% weaker. You do that because you want to perform in that race. But if you taper 10 to 14 days about 10 times a year, in the end of the year, you have not improved, right? Because every time that tapering takes away part of your training. So you only want to do that a few times per year to get a good performance. But if you again, if you do that too much, you lose the consistency, you lose your improvement, basically. You can imagine if you run a 10K race on the Saturday, and then the whole week before that you hardly do anything. The week after it, you're tired, so you also train very little. In the end of 2 weeks, you have done only one 10K hard and not much else. So yeah, this is not going to help you that much. We've come to the end of my presentation. Thanks, Pramod.
Yep. And thanks, Coach Hugo, for doing this session. And we are going to take questions. There are already some of the questions. You guys can type in questions because we are more than 100 people. And if I open it to ask questions, then it will be a challenge. I'm going to go through this. So with all these principles, Coach Hugo and myself, we have put up a plan for training, which is called Kenya Inspiration. And this is a unique marathon training program. And it's inspired by the Kenyan ways, like what Coach Hugo just explained, all of this, right? So what we do is it's not a tourism program, right? It's very focused for running. So as Coach Hugo said, you have to get ready to be trained, and that's why this is a 16 weeks. Where in first 10 weeks we will put you through a very intense type of a, not I will say intense, but we will build you to do the 2 weeks in Eton, which are going to be very intense. So to get ready for those 2 weeks, we are going to grill you through first 10 weeks. And then you go to Eton, Kenya, and you train there. There's intense, very, very event-specific workouts to sharpen your full marathon training. Once you come back from there, we will close it in 4 weeks. Out of that, of course, last 2 weeks will be taper and fine tune whatever the final adjustments has to be done to your training. And the 16 weeks, you are ready. So this program, so we have come together. First batch is going in. This program for them will culminate in TMM. So that's the first thing which is happening. And for those who don't know what is Eton, Eton is the house of champions. That's what they say to themselves. They're house of champions. And mark my words, I have been there. And of course, coaches is shifted from Netherlands to here because it's a home of champions. And all of those you see in a picture, many of them will be world champions, silver medalists, gold medalists. And that's how you will see everywhere in it and things happening. Why everybody comes there is because it is 8,000 feet. It has got a culture of running. There are these famous roads and trails and tracks of Eton where you train. So Kipchoge and all those great runners. There is Mayoben, right? Did I pronounce it properly, Coach Hugo? Mayoben. So there is one long route where before the big race, I always come and run there. So these are some famous roads, etc. And Coach Hugo has created a runners camp so that you get the exact experience of running camps. So all of these elite runners stay in those camps, not only in Hugo's camp, there are others as well. They don't go home. they stay there. Even somebody like Kipchoge, the god of running, will stay in the camp. In his rest time only, he will go home. So that's a runner's camp life. So this is all about whatever, and we are going to take questions. Before that, I just want to say three things. What I really uh, liked Coach Yogo was, and you said it so simply, giving a lot of meaning to it. It's always says that a master knows so much that he can put it in a very very simpler words. So first thing what you said is was plan your day and stick to that plan. It's very simple. It's very easy to understand, but it's very very hard to do it. And I think all the listeners will try to implement that. If you want to run tomorrow morning 30 kilometers, you better plan your Friday. Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Then another thing, what you said, second thing is if it costs energy, it costs your recovery. Fantastic way to put it.
Yes.
Yeah, we go for a mall because we are not running, or we are in a taking rest, and we will go for a shopping. That's costing you your recovery. And the third one, and the most important, what you said is enjoy the training, but don't let the enjoyment lead you. That was the fantastic statement what you made. So thank you for this, and let us now get into the questions. So I'm going from the top. Okay, so here we go. The first question is from Santosh Hoch, and he's asking, how long should we stretch? Example, if we run for 45 minutes, does 4 to 10 minutes of stretching is enough? That's a question from Santosh. So Coach Hugo, if you can now turn on your camera, I'm going to stop
Yeah.
sharing, but you can start answering. Let me do the
Can you
stop
can you
share.
see me?
Yeah, I have to stop the sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
Good. Good. Yeah. Good question. When it comes to stretching, we make distinguish between two types of stretching. There's the active stretching and the passive stretching, basically. Before a session, so as a form of warm up, we do a bit of active stretching. Generally, this is not before all easy runs. For my runners, generally, when they do an easy run, they just leave the house and they run. Maybe they start walking first for a few minutes and then they run. But when they have a workout, like a proper session at marathon pace or faster, they would do 10 minutes of warm up and then about 5 minutes of stretching. And that's a bit dynamic stretching. I said active, but actually the right term is dynamic, whereby the stretch of the muscles is kept very short, 5 to 10 seconds only. And then you switch. So you stretch your left quadriceps, your right quadriceps, and you do that 3 times each leg. You stretch the hamstrings, you stretch the calves. Sometimes you may do it in a little bit a bouncy way. So this is a way of warming up the muscles and getting ready for the session. This helps you to basically, do better in the session. Just, it prepares your body. The second form of stretching is the stretching that you do after a session. And there's actually no scientific evidence that this helps. People think that they're stretching to get longer muscles or to get more flexible. You're not really, at least. This is never proven. And also, there's no evidence that being more flexible helps you be a better runner. In fact, it might be the opposite. Many of the elites are quite stiff, and we think that a certain stiffness in the muscles is actually good to run, beneficial to run better. However, that being said, I feel like, and I think many elite runners feel like, taking time after a session to stretch for 5 to 10 minutes helps to relax the muscles. So it's not so much about getting more flexible, but it's helping you to kind of bring your muscles back to a recovery mode. It's kind of kickstarting your recovery. So I normally recommend after a session taking 5 to 10 minutes for some static stretching. And static stretching means that you keep the stretch a bit longer, like 30 seconds for each muscle group. So you stretch your left hamstrings for 30 seconds, then the right one 30 seconds, and you repeat that maybe another 2 times. And you do that for different muscle groups. So in short, dynamic stretching before a workout, but not before an easy run. which is a few seconds per stretch to warm up. And after a session, 5 to 10 minutes of static stretching, where you keep the stretch a bit longer.
Yep, that's great. And I hope, Santosh, you got the answer. So, the second question from Prasanna is, should aerobic training based on heart rate?
I love working with heart rate for sure. With the athletes that I work with heart rate, I feel like it's a very good way to keep the right consistency in training. So it really helps you because otherwise, athletes sometimes fool themselves. They say, oh, I'm running easy, but if you would check the heart rate, it's actually quite high. So it does help. It's like an added advantage. If you don't have heart rate monitor, if it doesn't work for you, because not everyone likes working with it, you can still run by pace, because generally what pace you can handle, and of course by your feeling. It's still a combination of how you feel and what your watch shows how fast you actually run. So yeah, if you do aerobic training, for example, your marathon pace is at 6 minutes per kilometer. um, this gives you a good indication of what an aerobic pace is for you. So 6 minutes, probably 5:30 per kilometer is still a good aerobic pace for you, but a bit faster than your marathon pace, maybe around half marathon pace. But as soon as you reach like your 10K race speed and faster than that, um, especially 5K race pace and faster, yeah, it's becoming less aerobic now. So you can still go by pace and by feeling, but heart rate helps you.
Yep, great. And next question is from Ashok, is asking how much gym training should be there?
Ideally, I recommend doing 1 session a week of weights. But this is what when I work with elites and with amateur runners who have all the time of the world. Uh, so then we can really prioritize also the strength training. Then I say 1 session a week, they go to the gym and they lift weights. And in the gym, we may do 3 to 4 exercises, a few repetitions, normally 2 to 3 sets of 8 reps, but they try to lift a pretty heavy weight when they do squats and lunges. So that's once a week. And then another twice a week, we do some floor exercises just using body weight, or maybe some dumbbells, but generally with body weight. They do some core exercises, back, hamstring exercises. Yeah, I can post that also. But I think JJ is running, Pramod, you have lots of exercises
Yep.
ready, right, in your app with lots of videos. So that's great. So yeah, there's a lot you can do without actually lifting weights. So it doesn't have to be the weights training, but yeah, my general recommendation is like that: once a week lifting weights, twice a week body weight exercises. But if you have less time, if you have time to train only 4 times a week, I would say go for the running. If you have to choose between one or the other, running has priority. Because if you have only a few hours, you don't want to spend all the time in the gym and just running 10 kilometers per week, because yeah, then you're kind of wasting your time a bit. But if you have the time to do it, yeah, then strength training is very helpful.
Okay. And Naveen is asking, how exactly the pace, 10K pace, HM pace, etc. Decide science behind it, or is it just by trial and error method and running different races?
Yeah, I would say there's not much science behind that. You get an idea by running races. You get an idea by doing training sessions. For example, if I give a session of um, 4 times 8 minutes at pretty hard but not all out effort, 4 times 8 minutes at maybe where I say like, hey, when you finish, you should feel like you could do 1 time 8 minutes extra, but not more than that. Then mostly people can run that at their lactic threshold or the anaerobic threshold. So that's the pace they could do in a race for about an hour. So, and that's normally in between their 10K and their 15K race pace. That gives you an idea. But yeah, generally, of course, as you get more experienced, the more you train, you know what your 10K pace is, more or less, and what your half marathon pace is. And hopefully it changes. Hopefully it gets better over time. So yeah, that's it, mostly it. It's not much science, it's experience.
Yeah, well said. So there's Ankit is asking, sir, how to maintain the pace in the race or workout. Sometimes our mind makes us feel to live and we give up. So how to focus on that?
A very good question. Now, I can, one of my favorite subjects is mental strength or mental training.
Yeah,
I
so
can talk about
that's let's now with so many hundreds of people around, let me get a promise from you that we do that session sometimes.
yes, yeah. We can
Yeah,
do that
sorry to
session
put you
one
in the
day.
spot, but yeah,
I
that
will,
will be great.
I will, one very short thing I can say is positive self-talk. This is what elites also do. Um, have certain, like a mantra in your mind, things you're going to tell yourself during the race. Keep pushing. You're doing great. You're good at suffering. You know how to handle pain. Tell yourself stuff. Uh, get ready for the launch. Get ready to push. You're telling yourself things in your mind that keep those negative thoughts away. So positive self-talk, if you practice it in training and in races, can be a very effective tool to deal with those negative thoughts that you may have in a race where you say, hey, I'm getting tired, I want to stop, I want to leave. So yeah, so this is something you can Google it, try to read more about it, but I find that one of the effective tools.
Self-talk, right? Okay.
Mm. Self-talk, yes.
Yeah. Uh,
I saw another question here about nasal breathing. I can be quite short about that.
yeah.
I don't think there's anything proven about that, and definitely there are no elite runners who practice that specifically.
Yeah.
People just breathe, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
open their mouth and nose, and they let the air come in and go out. Yeah, so nasal breathing, I wouldn't focus too much on that. It can help you maybe in daily life to calm down, to relax, but when training, don't worry about how you breathe. The only thing is you don't want to breathe too quickly. If you're running at your half marathon pace, for example, up to 10K pace, you want to maybe breathe 2 steps in, 2 steps out. Once you start breathing very fast, like, well, you know that you're already, when you practice that, you start to feel dizzy. That's you can't maintain that for a long time.
Yeah. So somebody is asking, so Ram Lalit is asking, can under 14 boys do fartlek workout?
Oh yes, they can. Yes, definitely. Fartlek, just for everyone to understand, is where you alternate going fast and slow in a session. So typically you do a fartlek not on the track, but somewhere on a trail or on a road. And for example, you go 2 minutes at a fast speed, 1 minute at an easy speed without walking, and you repeat that 10 times or more. So you might run for 30 to, let's say, between 20 and 40 minutes, alternating some fast parts and some easy parts. This is a very good aerobic workout. And it is typically one of those things that I would give to beginning runners or also young runners. It doesn't put too much pressure on you, like you have to hit a certain time. You just run by your feeling and alternate, some parts where you push and some parts where you take it easy.
Yeah. Next question is, if I understood this person, his Nagendra sir, and that's what he's asking. So just to give him background about him, he's 60 plus and he runs sub 2. Okay. Half sub 2, half he runs. Yeah. So his
Mhm.
question is, I'm 60 plus, how many more years I can run?
Yeah. Well, I hope for another 20 years or more. I don't know. I mean, I think if you stay healthy and fit and you take care of your body, you can continue training. Personally, I'm not coaching anyone who is 70 plus, but I know they are there. So I think if Nagenda, if he makes sure he sleeps, thinks of his sleep and eats healthy, takes care of his body, I think he can run for many more years.
Yep. So the point you made, and if it is same Nagendra sir, which I know, he has to understand that he has to run 4 races in a year.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you want to burn out your body quickly, do many races. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is Manohar. So he's asking, I have a doubt regarding calculating race pace. I have just started running marathons, and typically during marathon, my pace drops during last 10 kilometers. So the race pace, so is the race pace the average of the total, or should I discount the drop towards the end of the race?
That's actually a very good question, and it's a bit hard to answer because, yes, of course, you can say like, hey, you have to look at your average pace, and if it drops all the time, then it might be worth starting a bit slower in your next marathon so that you can maintain the pace until the end. On the other hand, if you're running, for example, 4+ hours on the marathon, definitely you can't sustain that without I mean you can't do that only on your glycogen, on your carbohydrates in your body. Your body will switch to using fat burning, and at some point the pace will drop. That is very normal. So uh, I find this a little bit hard to answer. I'll be honest. Like I would probably go somewhere a little bit in between, but probably if someone is able to maintain a pace for 32 kilometers in a race, and before the pace starts to drop, and in training they're able to do that pace pretty comfortably, I would probably still run close to that pace. Yeah. So in training, right? So but it depends a bit how the training sessions are going. So if, for example, a coach gives you a session like 4 times 5 kilometers at your race pace, you may want to start, I would say you may want to start at the actual race pace. So not what you did in the first 32 kilometers, but what you run in the overall of the marathon. And if that feels comfortable, then after 2 or 3 reps, you can increase the pace a bit.
Yep. Well,
That's, I think, how I would do that.
I guess we have, there are many questions, so we'll have to cut short on some questions. There is from Mir Rafikul, and this relates to breathing, and I guess you covered that, you just breathe the way you want. So I'm just keeping that for the time being. Okay, Santosh is asking, do you think it's worth getting the VO2 max test done to set your baseline or zones to train within your zones? So
I think if you have a testing center where you have an exercise physiologist, it can be helpful to get a test done. You have to realize that those tests are not 100% accurate. They also reflect what you do on a treadmill indoors on that particular day, but it does give you an indication. But don't ask for a VO2 max test. VO2 max is basically the speed you will run, if you go all out for about 2 to 3 kilometers. And that's not very useful information for you. But they can test your zones. They can test your aerobic threshold and your anaerobic threshold. Let me text that here so that you have the right information. Yes, that's the things you should ask for. The aerobic threshold and the anaerobic threshold, those are the things that are important in determining what your zones are. It's definitely better to get a test done by an exercise physiologist than to rely on your Garmin zones, because Garmin really just makes an estimate based on an algorithm. And many of you might be in the world of IT, so algorithms are great. They're amazing. You can do lots with it, but they are not always accurate. To give you one example, a simple algorithm or a simple rule is your maximum heart rate is 220 minus your age. So if you're 50 years, your maximum heart rate is 170. This is true if you test 1,000 people who are 50 years, the average of their maximum heart rate might be 170. But most of the people will have either a much higher or much lower heart rate. Some will have 185, others will have 150 or 160. So if your watch, whatever calculation your watch makes for you, for your training zones, is partially based on this fact of 220 minus age. And that's just incorrect on an individual level, only on a group level.
Um,
So yeah, so that's important to know.
Yeah. So there's another question from Amol. Is about importance of cross training and how often we should do it in a week or a month.
And with cross training, I think you mean alternative forms of training such as cycling.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Typically, what it means. Yeah.
That's a very good one. I think if cross training can be a very good way of adding an aerobic stimulus to your body. Like it's a form of training. It also trains your heart, your lungs in the same way. Your body will still respond by, making your heart bigger, making more mitochondria. So basically, as a coach, I look at the aerobic mileage someone makes, and that doesn't have to be only running mileage. If you can do some cycling mileage, is also good. Or you have different like those machines that how do you call it, like elliptical or something. They can still help you if you can handle the running, especially when you're a marathon runner. I would prefer the running, but if you, let's say now you're running 60 70 kilometers per week, for example, and you feel like you can't really do much more than that because you might get injured, but you can add 1 hour of cycling or cross training. Do it, because this can help you be a better runner. I have several runners who do that. I did it with some of the athletes in Bhopal. There was a girl I coached, Supriti Kachap, and Supriti was able to run around 100 kilometers per week, but not much more. Whether one of her colleagues could do 125, 130, Supriti could go up to 100, but if she did more, she would get some complaints. But I put her on the bike 2 to 3 times a week, and it helped her. She qualified for the World Junior Championships, and she's a pretty good runner. So I felt like the cycling still helped her to do something extra that she couldn't do running.
Another question from Amol only, and I think this is relevant. What is the right age for children to start running? And I guess Amol is referring to endurance running, long distance. So let's take it. That question is for long distance running.
Um, I think when children are young, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, the best thing is to let them run in form of a game. I coach athletics now, actually, at the international school here in Eldoret, 3 times a week. And a lot of the children are between 6 and 9 years, between 6 and 9. So I don't give them actual running. I just give them games like tag, shark in the middle. We have different games for children, whereby they run, they have fun, they enjoy it. Sometimes we do a relay, a running relay, but at that age, I really hesitate to give children actual running sessions where we say, okay, let's run for half an hour or 20 minutes, because this is boring for them and they may really lose the interest in running. So I feel like at that young age, they should simply play games that involve running, that involve jumping, that involve, just using their body. For me, the right age to start like proper running, the way we all do, like going for a half an hour or 1 hour run, or doing a fartlek or doing a track session, is from minimum of 14 to 15 years. For me, that's the right age to start like actual training. And before that, I would rather, if I want I have 3 daughters, and I think some of them might be talented in running. I would prefer they play football or other games whereby they're very active. And then when they're 14 to 15, we start to talk about, actual training for running.
Yeah, great answer. I absolutely agree with you on that. And we don't know how they are going to
Yeah.
grow up. Yeah, tomorrow they might become a jumper. They might become, their body might turn out to be something for a jumper, or
Yeah.
for any other sport. So yeah, absolutely. So I will take this last question because we are actually overshoot time. And great, thanks everyone for the response and asking these questions. That's where you learn. Others also learn a lot of things. So the last question, and there are many, I couldn't take that. So sorry about that. But yeah, there are questions still coming in. So I'll have to really stop now. So what should so when should get runners should get so when should runner get massage, and how important is that? That's a question, and I think that will be the last question. So it's about massage. And
Okay. Okay. Good question also. Um, yeah, I feel like this is quite personal actually. There are runners who love to get massage twice a week, every week. There are runners who almost never get massage. I personally almost never got massage because I felt like it didn't help me that much. We have to understand also that there's no scientific evidence that shows benefits of massage. It depends on the physio or the masseur. It depends on the athlete. For some athletes, like if I compare my wife with me, my wife was an elite runner, winning New York 10K half marathon, European champion. She loved massage and she found a big difference. She would have tension in her legs. She got massage twice a week and she would really feel like it helped her to be ready for the workout. Her muscles completely relaxed. I was a good runner, but I had felt like I had no benefit from massage. I would get a massage sometimes and feel even stiffer afterwards. What I did like at some point was the foam roller. So I got a foam roller and used the foam roll twice a week, and I felt like that helped me. So yeah, I would really say this is personal. Um, for some athletes, it's a basic part of kind of keeping complaints away, just like taking your car for service, right? So you take your car for service once in a while. So some athletes would get the massage to make sure they don't, get stiff muscles, they don't get injured, whereas others don't really feel like they need it.
yeah, so sorry people, those questions who I couldn't cover. I tried to put coach Hugo on the spot, and I hope we will maybe do a second session about mental preparation, and let's hope that will happen very soon. So thanks very much, Coach Hugo, for your time and your so much of knowledge you shared with us. To end this, I will just repeat what you said, and I just love that sentence that captures everything about how one should train. So you said enjoy the training, but don't let enjoyment lead you. And for recreational runners, I think that's the sentence everybody should write down and remember. That's a fantastic suggestion. So thank you very much for this. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed, and I can see a lot of feedback coming about great session, etc. So really, I also enjoyed the session, and thank you everyone. Thanks. I'll conclude
Thanks.
this. Thanks.